Welcome to the Introduction to Graphic Design. We're going to be discussing what is graphic design, who uses graphic design, and then the fundamentals of design. So, graphic design is a profession where images, typography, color theory, and more are used to communicate ideas and messages to the viewer. Graphic design is in everything we do, and it can easily be used to sway how we feel about a product, music, politics, and everything in between. Even things like choosing a college or university can be swayed by graphic design. So think about when you were looking at attending EMU. You looked at the colors of the school and they would have swayed you even if you hadn't known. It's a subconscious. A lot of graphic design is subconscious. The look of the website would have swayed how you felt about it, which is part of graphic design. The school's mascot could have changed your opinions. um, Cards that were sent to you in the mail, which are developed through graphic design, could have changed your opinions about the school. So these are all things to think about. Like everything we look at has some form of graphic design involved in it to change how we feel, to make us want to use the product, and so on. So, simply put, everyone, even when we aren't thinking about it, uses graphic design. Adding an emoji to a text is using an image to convey a message to a friend or family member. Creating social media posts, such as uploading an image, reel, snap, TikTok, etc., are all forms of graphic design that we are using to convey a message. As a graphic designer, the difference is that you have the knowledge to know how to convey messages in multiple ways. You use text, imagery, colors, layout, hierarchy, and many other techniques to not only convey your message in obvious ways, but also in a subconscious way as well. So, in this class, we will talk about the psychology of color, which is one of the best subconscious ways to sway viewers to feel a certain way. This logo is a very good example. So, I designed this when I worked for Bridgewater College. It's their secondary esports logo. And one of the reasons that we used red was because it's one of the school's colors, but also red immediately makes us think of for ferocity, competition. It builds us up, it gives us energy. There's a lot of things associated with red that are also associated with sports. The same goes for the orange color that's here. They do have an orange at Bridgewater, but this is not the same orange. But having that really bright orange beak contributes to the energy you feel looking at this eagle. If the background were blue, you would feel much calmer naturally just because blue is a more calming color. Part of the reason why this slideshow is done the way it is because this will naturally make you feel calmer because the colors are not extremely saturated and vibrant for the most part. The majority of it, the background is a calming cream color that makes you feel calmer as you're looking at it, allows you to absorb more of what's happening because you aren't feeling the same energy you feel, say, when you look at the esports logo. So these are some of the careers that are available where you will use graphic design. Most of them are pretty standard. Some of them are a little, maybe a little further out there. But this is just a general idea. This isn't all of the different things that you can do that use graphic design. So there's an art director, a web designer, advertising designer, product designer, print designer, illustrators, book designers, so like book cover designers, graphic designers, urban designers, packaging designers, multimedia designers, product artists, web or digital designers, web developers, animators, UI UX designers, brand designers, photo editors, desktop publishers, freelance designers, marketing, advertising managers, communications directors, marketing directors, digital production artists, motion graphic designers, apparel graphic designers. Also, apparel designers would use graphic design as well. Logo designers, publication designers, art professors, special effects artists and animators, brand identity designers, interface designers, signage designers, environmental designers, storyboard artists, exhibit designers, proposal designers, greeting card designers, video editors, photographers, stationery artists, data visualization professionals, infographic designers, social media designers, and content creators. So these are just a few, and a lot of them are pretty understandable. Some of them, like the data visualization, is a little more unusual when you're thinking about this design career. But there are also many careers where graphic design is used within them to help convey messages. So if you're in a job where you have to do slide decks to present an idea to clients, knowing some of the basics about graphic design can help you to not only tell your story, but to subliminally also help the people that you're showing feel better about what you're presenting. So like if you know that you need to calm down a client because they're very hyped up, or something's gone wrong and you're trying to fix the problem using a blue or a purple or some of those cooler colors, green, that's the other one I was thinking of. You can use those colors to present a calmer slideshow to help calm that client as you are explaining things, because we will naturally calm or get excited based on the colors that are around us. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you're, I don't know, a forensic accountant, but you have to present something to someone, you may want some of those calmer colors opposed to doing your entire presentation in like bullfighter red. So there are some fundamentals of design. The fundamentals of design are the tools every designer needs to create stunning designs that will not only look great, but also will get your message out there. So these are the basic ones. There's line, shape, form, color, value, space, texture, balance, emphasis, movement, patterns and repetition, rhythm, proportion, variety, and unity. So over here is a sticker that I designed for something. A lot of these fundamentals of design, actually I think all of them are in this as well. So as we're going through this list, because I'm going to explain each one of them, you can think about this design and kind of see where you feel each of those pieces come into play. So a line is a straight or curved mark that creates a path that connects 2 points. Lines come in different weights, lengths, and direction. So when we say weight in this, we don't mean like heavy. We mean that they're darker. So this is a lightweight font. This is a heavyweight font. So it's the basically the bolder the font, the heavier it is. So keep that in mind when we're talking about weight in design. So a line's weight, the bolder that line is, so the thicker it is, the heavier it is. A shape is a shape or bleh, a shape is a two-dimensional. I don't know what else is supposed to, oh, it's supposed to be shape. Okay. A shape is a two-dimensional shape that is fully enclosed. I think that when I was writing these, I forgot a few words. That's okay. A shape is a two-dimensional form that is fully enclosed. So a shape is basically two-dimensional, and it has all of its edges connected. The shape is limited by its height and width. So how tall it is and how wide it is, and it can be a geometric, meaning it has hard edges. So think a triangle, a rhombus, these shapes down here. Or it can be organic, meaning it has soft edges. So think of like flower petals, um, and just kind of really um, unnatural shapes. So normally natural shapes, we think of squares, rectangles, very geometric shapes, whereas organic shapes are like if you just made like a squiggly line that one end meets up with the other one, but it's all over the place. A form is a three-dimensional shape. It has height, width, and depth. So think of a cube or a sphere. So these can also be geometric or organic. So a sphere would be a geometric form, and an organic form would be like a tree. So it is very kind of all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to how a tree exists, but it is considered an organic form because it's three-dimensional. So color. Color is our perception of how light reflects off of surfaces. Colors have three main characteristics: there's hue, value, and intensity. And if you get these confused, it is okay. They can be a little hard to keep in mind. Sometimes I even struggle, and I have been doing this for a long time. So if you don't understand them immediately or get them in the right order, it's okay. So color can also be described as warm or cold. So we talked about that warm colors are yellows, oranges, and reds, and cool colors are greens, purples, and blues. So the hue of a color is the shade. So red, green, yellow, blue, pink. Value is how light or dark the color is. The intensity is how bright or dull the color is. So think of like neons are bright. If you look at duller shades like hunter green and like a jade green. I don't know why greens are kind of the color that's hitting me right now, but like a plum purple would be a good example. So those are duller colors just because they're not that vibrant like neon fluorescent pink. Okay? We're going to talk about value again because value also plays another role in this. So value describes the level of light or dark in a color, but it can also talk about the contrast of light and dark and how objects are separated in a space. So, I'm trying to think how best to describe this. Um, think about like how shadows work, and that can show kind of the value of an object with separate like it how it's separated in space. So gradation of the value can show mass and contour. So think about how like if you're drawing a sphere, let me see if actually I can get up something that shows how a sphere looks. So let's see here, drawing a sphere. Okay, yeah, here we go. So here, this one's a good example. So we have a gradation here that shows that this has it has a shape and it has mass and stuff because we've gone from a really bright white and we've slowly graded it down to black to show its space, like where it is in space. So that's its value, if that makes sense at all. We'll kind of, if you guys don't entirely understand this, then I'll explain it more. But that's kind of what it means there in value. So they're kind of similar, but they're kind of different at the same time, which is confusing. So another fundamental of design is balance. Balance refers to the distribution of space, colors, textures, and objects. This balance comes in three forms. So we have symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. So symmetrical balance means that both sides of the design or composition are similar. You could either 100% or almost split the image down the middle and both sides look very similar. So think about if you drew a square and you folded the piece of paper in half so that the square was perfectly split in the middle. And then you opened it, there'd be half of the square on each side, but it's perfectly symmetrical because you did it down the middle. Um, so that's what symmetrical design is. Now, when we're doing symmetrical balance, it doesn't have to be 100% the same. It just has to be enough that it feels balanced by the symmetry. So think of like the Taj Mahal. So it's not identical on both sides fully because there's nature, there's buildings around it, but if you were to fold it in half, the Taj Mahal is similar enough on each side that it would be considered symmetrically balanced. So asymmetrical balance means that the sides of the composition are different, but they still feel balanced. So think about when you look at images and sometimes there's like a lot of stuff going on one side and there's really nothing going on in the other and it kind of feels like it's lopsided. When you have asymmetrical balance, then there's stuff going on both sides, but they're even. So it doesn't feel like one side's lopsided more so than the other. So keep that in mind. We see it a lot in business cards. So you'll have a QR code on one side and information on the other side of the back of like a business card, but they're sized to match so it doesn't feel like it's imbalanced, but they're different. Radial balance means that the composition has a central point and that everything moves around that central point. So kind of like the solar system. So the sun's in the middle and you have planets all around it and they move around it. So our solar system feels balanced because of how they spin, and there's always kind of the right amount of planets around it for it to feel symmetric, or for it to feel balanced. So you don't feel like one side of the galaxy is heavier than the other, and so on. So kind of think about that. So you have a central point, and then everything around it is balanced. Um, Let me see really quick if I can get some examples of these for you guys really quick. Images. Okay, so this is actually really good because this shows symmetrical, so you can see how you can split it down the middle, and then this shows asymmetrical, so one side is different from the other. So you can see this is a really good example of symmetrical balance. So both sides feel perfectly balanced because you can fold it down the middle and you will get the same result on both sides. And because of that, they're balanced. This is a really good example as well right here, because you could fold this down the middle and you would have that perfect balance. And this actually may be really great because this may have the others. So that's just symmetrical balance. So here's asymmetrical balance. So here you can't split this down the middle, but because this person is here, it balances out this door over here. You don't feel like one side is lopsided more than the other. And overall, the image feels like it has the right amount of everything in it. So there's no part of it that you're going, oh, well, you know, like it's empty on this side, but it's full on that side. And then a flower, that's a really good one, is a really good example of a radial balance, so that everything centers around the middle of the flower with its bloom. So those are really good examples of all of those. So just keep that in mind as you're designing, because these are things that we need to make sure that we keep in mind. So the following thing is emphasis. So emphasis is a part or parts of the design that catch the viewer's attention. Emphasis can be created through contrasting different elements through size, color, texture, shape, and more. So think of that picture of that flower. The emphasis in that image was the flower. The background was green, it was kind of faded and blurred a little bit, so we didn't focus in on that as much as we focused in on that beautiful flower, that all the petals were clearly done, everything was well established, and we were very focused, and the emphasis was put on the flower. So make sure when you're designing, the things you want people to pay attention to are the things you put emphasis on, and the things you'd like for them to pay less attention to, you find ways to take the emphasis off of them. Movement. Movement is how the viewer's eye travels through a design or work of art. Movement can be guided through natural lines, visual cues, and much more. The movement of a piece can help guide the viewer on how to feel and the actions to take. So think about reading a book. With books, and you can use this slide as an example. So I have used visuals to point you to where you need to go. So I have this line here, which is at the top left, because we read left to right. So you will see this first, and the line goes down, which takes your eyes directly to this line. So because we read right to left, you come down and you read the title. And then I have these arrows here, and naturally when we reach the end of a line, we go back left to continue reading. So I have used that natural movement of our eyes to come down here and give you an arrow so that you know this is the next thing I want you to read. You're going to come down, so you read all of this, and you continue to do that all the way down the page, because I've added movement to make you continuously follow. I also use the weight of my writing to tell you what's important. Those are kind of the visual cues. I want you to visually read this first. It's why it's the largest and the most weighted. And then I want you to read these headers, and that's why they're a little bolder. They're not as bold as the title and not as large, but they're still having an impact. And then this is much lighter because this is important, but I want you to read it in a certain order. So I'm making your eyes do that by giving you visual clues of where to go. So you're going to do that in your design as well. So if you are designing a logo and you want, think of a spiral and you want them to start on the outside of the spiral, you will need to give them visual clues to know to run, where to start and where to end that spiral. And some of that can be done by the motion of the spiral, how it's going, so the movement of how it goes inward. And some of it can be done with lines that you include to show where to start. So that's just something we keep in mind when we're designing. We always want to think about how people are viewing it, how they're following it, and what we're kind of telling them to do. So, patterns and repetition. Patterns are a repeating element or elements that can be found throughout the work. Repetition is using patterns to make a work feel familiar and it makes it feel active. So, remember that building we looked at, right? Actually, let me just grab the article really quick because I can show you bigger there. So, see here how there are patterns. So, the windows are patterns, these triangles are patterns, but they also feel like they're repetitive, but they give us this feeling that things make sense. They give us a stability. They make us feel like we understand what's happening. So that's what patterns and repetition are used for. The fall leaves are killing me. So that's how we use patterns repetition. Think about that in your design. So if you need a background, what can you add to it to give like that kind of feeling of activeness, feeling of familiarity, and kind of give the eye something to follow but don't have to focus in on. Rhythm is something else where we use repetitive elements. So rhythm is when one or more elements are used repeatedly to create a visual tempo or a feeling of organization. This can be created through repeating a shape, form, or pattern. So think of that building again. So it used a repetitive form of a triangle slash square or diamond to kind of give us an idea of how to visually look across the building, how to visually look down it, and to give us kind of this rhythm or tempo to the building. Proportion refers to the size and scale of various elements within a design. The scale and size of elements help to make a scene believable and feel balanced. So think about when you're looking at a tree with a person. So we don't want the person to be bigger than the tree because that doesn't really make sense. So we proportion things to work correctly. So think about that when you're designing, if you're designing elements that need to be proportionally fixed so that they make sense and feel balanced. And that could just be even shapes. So like if you have a triangle and a square, but your square is much bigger than your triangle, it's not going to feel balanced because one's massive and one's tiny. So keep that in mind as you're building your logo, as you build your resume and your business cards. How can I balance things? And even keep it in mind when you're taking a picture of yourself, because how should you be leaning? What should you have on? Like how can you balance out the general feel? Variety refers to the use of multiple elements of the design that pull the viewer in and hold their attention. These elements are used to guide the viewer through the image and to parts of the image that might not have been seen without these elements. So again, think of the flower. There are certain parts of that we might miss. Like you might have missed the leaves around the flower. You might have missed that there's some white in the background because you were very focused on that flower form. But within that flower, there's variety. So we're looking at all the different petals and stuff. We're looking at how the shadows work. All because, which I should bring this in here so you can see it. It's like we're looking at all these the variety of these petals and they draw our attention in. They show us like the shadows that we might not have seen, how they fold, the different color variations. So like there's a darker spot here. These look like they're a little darker than maybe these out here. We notice little crinkles in the petals and stuff because there's a variety to those petal forms that make us pay attention. And they may eventually even draw you out to this part where you see these green leaves, you see there's something white over here, and you start trying to interpret what's on the outside after you've fully digested what's on the inside of this picture. Unity is using elements to create a sense of harmony with all the parts of the design. When used correctly, there will be a feeling or sense of the design being complete. So, you know what a completed image looks like when you play, like when you watch a movie or you play a video game or you see things on social media. When they feel complete, they don't feel like something's missing. So, think about that when you're designing. How can you create unity in your image so that everything feels harmonious and it feels finished? So here are two designs that I've created, and this is kind of going to explain some of the harmony and unity. So this image feels completed, as does this one, because everything has been balanced. It has some symmetrical balance, so you could technically cut this down the middle, and it would kind of look the same on both sides. It's not going to be identical. Um, But there's balance with how the mountains are done, how the river is on each side. You basically look up the river to the mountains to the sky. There are trees on both sides, so there's a harmony to it. The same goes here that you have flowers on the bottom, flowers on the top. It helps to balance it. It's not balanced asymmetrically or symmetrically this way, but if you kind of look at it down the middle, it could be slightly symmetrical crossways. It could also be considered asymmetrical because it is slightly different on each side and it's different enough. But it feels balanced because there's enough stuff on each part of it. It all works together harmoniously with the colors, with the flowers. Nothing feels like it sticks out. Nothing is going, hi, look at me and only me because I am different from everything else here. It also incorporates a lot of the stuff that we talked about with the other parts, so balance, harmony. Um, it has some repeating patterns. Both of them have that. They have elements that make them feel harmonious and familiar. There's patterns that are going on. All of these trees are basically, there's like 5 trees in there. I designed this. I know how many trees I created, and I didn't want to create 30 of them. So there's a small variety that are just repeated, but they're repeated in a way that they're not a clear pattern, but they're clear enough that you get the familiarity that this is a forest of trees that have some similarities. The same goes over here. There's some patterning in how the flowers are arranged. There's some patterning with the background splatter. While it's not like an extreme pattern, it's enough that our brains go, okay, that's a splattering of paint, and it's enough familiarity for us to recognize what it is and move with it. So that's a basic overview of graphic design, some of the fundamentals we're going to use, who uses graphic design, and what it is. If you have questions, please feel free to email me or text me as always, or talk to me in class. We'll continue going over some of these different aspects and talking about some other ways that we use graphic design to sway people and to create balanced, beautiful imagery.